So Jesse, what's going on, Cuse? C&J Juse from the Cuse. And here we are again.
We're back, ready to have some fun again.
Always.
We have a good one for you today. We're excited about it. You know, bring back a little bit of controversy from the past a little bit.
I think so.
So it's gonna be fun. Hopefully we can bring some information and some new knowledge to the situation and kind of open up some doors, maybe, you know.
So what we were talking about earlier was you started watching the Netflix documentary about Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, it's Colin in black and white.
Okay.
I started watching it the other day. You know, when everything happened with Colin Kaepernick, I was very frustrated about the way he handled himself.
Now, is this, mean to cut you off, is this a series? Is it?
Yeah, so it was a documentary. Yep, it was, I forgot how many episodes, I think like 6 or 8 episodes.
Okay.
But it really gave you kind of like a back look or a look into his life and why he went through what he went through and what really created the foundation of his fight for social justice. You know what I mean? Which I thought was a good look for me. Like I really got intrigued by it, and it was nice to learn. To see like a different look of why he was doing what he did and what he went through as a kid. You know. As young men and women, we go through a lot as children, right? And some go through more. You know, we all face adversity in some sense of our lives. You know, especially at a young age. But it was kind of nice to see what he went through and the adversity that he had to face being an adopted child, you know, in the environment he was in and how he was treated. So the show really portrayed like a lot what he went through and how people almost looked down upon him.
You actually got to see the earlier stages of his life and everything as an athlete coming up and everything.
And what he went through. I mean,
that's cool.
It was crazy to see it because you got a young athlete he was a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he was a stud baseball player. Like he was pushed, and I never knew that. He was pushed to play baseball. I mean, he was getting drafted. Like he had MLB teams saying right out of high school.
Really?
Like this kid, he was nasty.
Wow.
He was legit. So like going into his senior year, like it was baseball. Like coaches, I mean, there was MLB teams going to his house. They were pushing him. His coaches in high school were pushing him. But he was he was sticking to his guns when it came to playing football. Like that was his dream. Like I want to be a quarterback.
That's cool.
So
he basically, it was his senior year when he transitioned into football.
No. So he was always playing football.
He was playing both, so he was like basically a triathlete.
Yep.
Okay,
but
because I heard somehow basketball was also associated with it.
I think he did play a little basketball. It didn't show too much in the show with that. It showed a little bit, but it was the big foundation was definitely football and baseball. But he was a top dog in baseball. He was a pitcher, and he was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was nasty.
Because I heard about it, but because, like I said, I'm a Colin Kaepernick fan because he's. You know, I'm biased, but he played for the greatest football team ever, the San Francisco 49ers.
Here we go.
You know,
here we go.
But I've always been a fan of his just because of that. And on top of that, he was such a tremendous quarterback. You know what I mean? So that's where, like, I mostly knew about his life. But when you told me about the documentary, I went and, you know, you can go to YouTube and you can see certain like the trailer and different episodes, and they did mention baseball, but I just didn't know how in depth he was with baseball. I thought it was just mostly football, but then to hear now you're saying it, like he was just as good in baseball as he was in football.
He was actually like a star. Like
so he would have been in the major leagues in baseball.
100%. Yeah,
that's cool. That's dope.
And like his coaches were pushing him. Now for me, like I have a different perspective because I'm not a 49ers fan. I'm a Packers fan, so I was real mad.
I'll forgive you.
Yeah, you can. But I was real mad when they beat the Packers in the playoffs. So I wasn't happy. I love it. But for me, when I gained knowledge on Colin Kaepernick was through the controversy, right? And it was something that I was fully against what he was doing, right? Like, you're kneeling for the national anthem, and for me, that was a major issue. I'm like, why are you doing that? Especially when the national anthem represents the people that have fought for our country and died for our country, for us to have the freedoms that we have today. So
let me ask you, did in the documentary, did you get to see and understand why he started doing that?
So I didn't understand. It showed a lot of injustices towards him. Okay. So that's where I think, like, for me, like I said, during the whole controversy, I was fully against Colin Kaepernick, 100%, right? Like, I didn't believe that what he was doing was right. There had to be another way. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying I didn't support the idea of standing up for Black Lives Matter. I think that's important. Right, you want to stand up for the social injustices that are happening. Yeah. Right, whether it's white, black, anything, anybody that has a social injustice, you have a right to stand for it, and I truly believe in that. So that was the big thing. But doing it during the national anthem was something that I was like, man, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Yeah, so that was a tough thing.
And it was funny, not funny, but a lot of people took offense to it because it was during the national anthem.
Yes.
Had it would have been any other thing. Or just naturally protesting, out there with them at those times, because he started doing it basically when it was police brutality.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I definitely supported him and understood why, because, and this is the one thing I say, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, me being a black man in America, of course I'm going to support Black Lives Matter because I'm black.
Yep.
I also support all lives matter because I believe every life matters. But at that time, all lives weren't getting gunned down by police. It was Black lives. That made it even more personal for me because I've also dealt with a lot of situations with police officers my own self, but that's something totally different. But
it's a reason.
But it's a reason behind it. Yeah.
So, I have friends that have told me that too, right? Like I have a friend who went to the border. He's black. His girlfriend's Spanish, and she has 2 Spanish daughters. They were at the border, and he got dragged out of the car. And she was losing her mind. Yeah. And like for me, I don't understand that, right? Like I don't face that. Yeah. I've never had to. Yeah. So I can't say that I know what it's like to be in your shoes or his shoes. But when he explained that to me, like it really got to me because I'm
resonated with you.
Yeah, because it's just obviously you guys are people I love. You know what I mean? And when you hear this stuff, like I don't face that. I've never had to face that. When I walk out my door, nobody's looking at me in a certain way, right? Like and it's very sad that happens. But when he told me this story, it really bothered me because his girlfriend was there talking to me about it too, and he got yanked out of the car. He got thrown into the back of the car. They were gonna arrest him because they thought he was kidnapping him. Oh, wow. And I'm like, just ask the reasoning. Like all you gotta do is say, what do you guys like? If it was me pulling up there, they're not gonna rip me out of the car, right? So like that's where I have definitely like a frustrating look when it comes to certain police or officers, certain people of authority, right? I'm not saying that I hate all police officers, and I know you're not either, right? But there's a bad apple in some of these areas, right? And those bad apples, they're the ones that we're gonna know about.
And I always say, not all police are bad police, but one cop can make an entire precinct look like assholes.
Yep, 100%.
I don't give the idiot that killed George Floyd, I don't say his name or give him any credit.
Yep.
But you look at the cops that were surrounding him, I include them as far as, excuse my language, pieces of shit in that sense because they allowed it to happen for so long.
Yeah.
Yep. You could have stopped it.
Yep.
And then a lot of them were saying, well, he's our supervisor, he's our captain, whatever, at that moment. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right and wrong, you stand up for it. You know what I mean?
That has nothing to do with it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but we can talk about that another time.
Yep.
But as far as the Colin Kaepernick, I want to hear your overall opinion of how do you look at it now? And then I'll tell you what I feel because I did see certain clips about it and certain things about that documentary I understood, and then there were certain things about that documentary I didn't like. So it's biased opinion and fact in some sense. But how do you look at him overall now since watching it?
So he faced a lot of adversity, right? Being a young man in the situation he was in, being adopted, and even like in the show, it portrays his parents not understanding his life, his lifestyle as a black man, right? Like they didn't understand it, and they looked at it in a way as they almost embarrassed him in ways. Like the beginning, the first episode is about cornrows. So like he wanted cornrows, and he went to get it done. His mom brought him to a store, which was really cool. Like she took the step to like separate herself from her technical community, right? Her comfort zone, to try to help him understand him as a person. And you could tell that like she was so far out of her element, she was just uncomfortable, and she made it uncomfortable for him. Okay. Like it was really unfortunate, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is or where you live or what. Or what your hairstyle is. You just treat people good, right? Exactly. Like there should be we shouldn't be in here even running into these issues. If I walk into the city, like when I worked in Harlem, I never had an issue. Yeah. You know why? Because I treated people with respect. Exactly. And they treated me with respect. Exactly. It's not, and I'm from Waterville, where there's a ton of small town, right? Yeah. Like that's the difference of like understanding that I can go into a city and be fine, because it's how you treat people. It's how you treat people.
And that's funny you said that, because when I was living in Queens and in Brooklyn, and I had family in Harlem, and I would visit the Bronx, the love and the respect that I got there was totally different when I went into Long Island. Okay. Whereas Long Island, you do have some predominantly minority with the Black, Hispanic neighborhoods, but for the majority, it's more white people. So I think the only thing that kind of made it okay for me was because I was working for a film production company. So they were so used to seeing those trucks out there. Okay. But me going into stores and areas, you could tell the level of uncomfortness amongst people. Yeah. Even when I had on the work stuff. Yep. But at that time, if my hair wasn't cut right, or if my beard was bushy, or if I had on certain type of jeans or whatever, I could tell the difference of if I'm in Harlem or if I'm in the Bronx or Brooklyn, where they're used to that. You know, they're used to seeing people that look like me. You know what I mean? So I can see the difference, especially of what you're saying compared to New York City, compared to certain areas. You know what I mean? So that's so true.
Well, that's what was unfortunate about the show. You know, like you see these people are just uncomfortable in these environments, right? So like she started to do good by him. She brought him to this hairdresser to her house. You know what I mean? And like you could see, because he was not used to being in that lifestyle. Like this girl she did his hair fire. Like it was awesome. Cornrows looked great. You know what I mean? He loved it. He was so happy and so proud to represent himself and the man he was. You know, his ethnicity. He was happy to just represent that. And you could see that, like the change in him, how he was happy about it, which I thought was pretty cool. And then she brought him to the woman's house again, and she's like, "You want food?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was all excited because he didn't get that type of food, you know.
At home, exactly.
At home, so and that's where like it was the separation of taking kind of a part of him away from his life, you know. So as time went on throughout that show, his hair was growing long, he was doing the cornrows and stuff like that, and he had the cornrows and he was pitching in a baseball game, and the white coach said, "What's going on with his hair?" And he was like all mad about it. Yeah. And the coach was like, "You make him cut it." Oh. So now the parents, which I don't agree with this at all, because you're taking something away from somebody's life that he's proud of. Yeah. So as he went home, the coach called the parents and they're like, "You gotta cut your hair." Yeah. And he's like, "I don't want to cut my hair. Like I love this. Like this is me. This is who I am. This is who I can represent." And they forced him to cut his hair. Oh wow. So like that to me was an instant show of like what he faced in the environment where he grew up, which is super sad. Yeah, nobody should have to. You should be able to be yourself. Like, exactly. We teach kids everywhere, like be yourself. Be yourself. Exactly. Be open, right? And like.
And that's a part of them, the way the way they dress, their hairstyle, the way they talk, that's a part of who they are. And especially as a young child who, in that situation, adopted by white parents, which to me, I give any credit to any parents or people that adopt a child from another race, especially if your intentions are good. Because you hear some adoptions about people that are like kind of shitty with the kids and things, and it's all about the money.
So I grew up, I don't mean to interrupt you, right? I grew up with, this kid was my best friend, right? I won't say his name, but he grew up with us, and he was one of the only black kids in our school.
Okay.
And we were best friends. I mean, we played sports together all the way through. Always went over to his house. Like, I knew his adopted parents, but they're two people. Like, the father was a good guy. The mom, she was trying to make it like a mill just to make the money.
Okay.
Right? And she treated him so poorly.
Yeah.
And it was so unfair to him that he faced that, right?
Exactly.
Like, there's so many different ends of the spectrum, but that I don't agree with. Like, if you're gonna adopt somebody, I don't care the ethnicity. You do it because you care and you want to create a better life for
that
them,
person.
Right?
Exactly.
No matter what.
Exactly.
And that's where I was really upset because I got to live that, right? Like, I got to watch
him go through it, so you can just imagine what he was going through, you know.
And then I saw him end up. It was unfortunate because we were so close. I mean, we were together, me and a couple other of my buddies. We lived at his house, and he lived with us. We were. It was constant. We were best friends. We had each other's backs all the time. We were supportive, and then I watched him go through so much, right? And then he left our school because he had to leave. He couldn't live there anymore. So he went and lived in a garage with a kid, a friend of his, in a different school, and he lived in the kid's garage for 2 years. Wow. And then I saw him like a couple years after that, and I could just tell, like, it was good to see him, but you could just tell, like, he was down, you know, because he faced so much in that home, and it was so unfair to him.
And the psychological effect with it does, because not everybody shakes it. Some people,
they don't.
It just sticks with them. Like, childhood trauma is so real because some people get over it in the sense of they become better.
Yep.
Some people don't.
Yeah.
And as they get older, it's like, this is the impact of what happened. Yeah. And that can also happen in
any family.
In any family.
100%.
You know what I mean? So it's sad when that does happen, when you get adopted, because you look at, and I don't know, but I know people that have been, and you hear the stories of the good and bad, what they went through. And it's like their expectations, especially when they're at that age when they know, okay, this is not the family I was born into. This is not even my biological mom, my biological father, not even uncles, aunts, no biological family. And you go through the system and then you finally get adopted. A part of them, I'm sure, thinks, will this work or won't it? But when it does, you could see, like, wow, I'm loved.
And
but
there's a lot of respect there too.
It's like, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? So it's very unfortunate when you see that happen with kids, and then to look at it from his perspective, because he is a celebrity, he's famous. So you actually detailing in every inch of his life and what he had to go through. And like you were saying, the mother, you know, because I did see snippets of it, and I saw the part where the father did say, you have to cut your hair. And it's sad, you know what I mean? Because now
that's a part of it. That's a part of it.
And that's what you were saying. It takes away from who he is and who he's trying to become. Because as kids, we don't know who we are. We don't know what we're going to become. We don't even know as adults what we're going to do the next 5 minutes from now. We know we have an idea, but turn of events happen and we're like, damn, I didn't know that.
I got to change this now.
You know what I mean? So as a child, when you're trying to find yourself in an identity that you're not even you weren't even born into, and then you find some sense of who you are, and then it's like,
and you get that taken away. And
when it comes from home, oh man, that's even worse.
And that's where I think the show really kind of hit me. And I won't say that. And Colin Kaepernick was in the show he'd like show up at different times. It was kind of cool how they did it with the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Like he would talk about like there'd be the room and the young man playing him.
Okay.
And then he would explain certain things. So it was pretty cool how they did that.
Okay,
cool.
I gotta check that out. Okay.
But the parents were supportive at times, but there were so many times that you could see that like he just felt defeated. You know, and like you said, they're taking away a part of him, you know, and that's only going to turn you to bring you down, right? And like this kid was fighting, and he had a friend who he was really close with, and you could tell that friend was like a huge supporter of him, right? Okay. Like, and then in the show, it gets crazy because baseball, a lot of it was like how good they were in baseball. I mean, they were great. Okay. But then they went to, I can't remember where they went. They were staying in a hotel. And you could tell, like it's sad, the hotel was just attacking the black young men that were in there. Wow. Right? And like he's on a predominantly white baseball team. Yeah. Right? So like he's one of the few. And he would explain it like, you guys don't get it. Like at one point it showed a clip of his friend going up to get a second ice cream. Right? He tried to go up to get a second ice cream, and she's like, "No, you can't have one. You've already got one."
And you know,
but his friend just came up and got the second one. So like, it was sickening to see that and to think that people are that way. And now, coming from my perspective, and coming even in the show, it shows like the white perspective of not understanding. Right? Yeah. Like I could walk up and get an ice cream and you can't.
I can't. But you know what's so crazy about that? I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
This didn't take place in the 1960s.
No.
This was in the 90s.
I know. And
where it's like, okay, racism happened, but we kind of got used to it because in the 90s, some of the people that I'm close with come from interracial homes.
I know.
So it's like, why is this happening in the 90s? If this was the 60s and the 70s, then I would understand it a little bit more. But the fact that they're going into a hotel and something as simple as getting another ice cream, like that's sick.
Yeah, and then you see it. It was cool how they expanded it as the show went on. So he's in the hotel. You see how he's treated, right? And like you could tell that the hotel people are like
watching.
Yeah, and just him directly, and like he can see it, and his friends can't.
Can't, of course.
So at one point they're in a room, they're messing around, right? And it's all the kids. They're all messing around. He's sitting down. He's not the one messing around. His good friend's the one that's like really kind of wreaking havoc and messing around, and like they're all laughing, they're having a good time. The woman comes in directly and threatens to call the cops on him. And now he's the only black person in there. So like at that point, like the friend finally sees it, and the friend's like, man, he's staying with us. Like he did nothing wrong. He's on our baseball team. Yeah. And she's like, you kids all get out of here. Yeah. But he stood up for him, right? So like it was cool, but he tried explaining it at times. Like there's bits and pieces of him explaining it, and they just didn't understand, right? Because they don't see, like I can't walk in your shoes and understand it, right? Like I'm not in your shoes, so I can never see what you see or see what you face. And I think that's something that taught me a lot about this show, is understanding that like you don't know what people are going through.
Exactly.
Because then a bigger group came in of baseball players, and they were all black kids, right? And they came in, and he got excited. He's like, oh man, and like he's dressed much different, right? They got like their baggy shirts on, and they're smiling and whatnot. And he walks up, and the kid, I give this was cool. It was a cool interaction. Like if you could see this clip, it was a really neat interaction. Okay. Because what had happened is instantly somebody came over and said something to them about the hotel. Now at the time, the way they portrayed it was there's 3 kids on his baseball team, on Colin Kaepernick's, that are white kids that are messing around right in front of a woman, like throwing stuff, like wrestling right in the lobby.
She's oblivious to all.
Completely ignoring it. Yeah. These kids walk in, and they instantly approach him. I can't remember if it was a girl or a guy. Instantly approach him and say, "You're not going to cause any trouble." Blah 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 blah. And they were like, "No, sir," and super respectful. Yeah. Super respectful. But you see so many clips that you're like, "Whoa." Yeah. Like, hold on a second. And you don't, like, I don't see that, right? Yeah. Like, but you do. Exactly. And it's crazy because I think that's the understanding that I really got from the show, was like, wow.
But that's what I just wanted to say, because you're saying that you don't, but in the same sense you do, because I look at you as one of difference, just in general, because of your mentality, you're diverse in all around. It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're white, if you're Latino, whatever. You see people. You don't see race, ethnicity. You see the character of the person. So that's good that you see that, okay, just like that young man that stood up for him. He started to see up early the difference. Okay, this is how he's portrayed to where I'm portrayed. I'm the one that's causing the havoc. He's the one that's getting the blame. So it does do something to that young man as they get older, because he watched one of his friends go through that. You know, and that's what I say about you also. You, as much as you tell me about friends that you had that were white, you tell me the same thing about friends that you had that were black. So you were one of those, like how me and you get along.
It's family.
Again, you don't see color, you see character. Because if I didn't have a good character, it wouldn't matter if I was black or white, Hispanic, Asian, it wouldn't matter. You'd just be like, I ain't fucking with this person. And that's the same thing if you were like that.
Because it's negativity, right?
Exactly. And
positivity breeds positivity.
Exactly.
And negativity breeds negativity.
And you want to be around people that are like that. So that's good that you did see that, and that's good that, you know, you can recognize that. And from what I'm getting of what you saw from this documentary is you kind of understood his flight and everything that he was going through.
And it portrays it really well. It really does. And like, you can see the injustices, and even the parents, like there's so many things that they can't understand about him, and it's unfortunate. And to a certain point, you try to understand, because you're like, well, maybe they just don't understand the overall, right? Like they've never been in that environment, but you have to support him and understand, right? Like you gotta be there and support him. So you saw him once he said, there's a couple clips with his dad where he's like, I want to play football, and then his dad goes out and gets him like big wig trainer, right? Like a top dog trainer, and he goes to that trainer and he develops really well. And then the father fights because there's a coach that doesn't pick him in football, right? And it's a big discouragement. Like he goes and has a day in the tryouts, like has a day, does way better than the other quarterback. But the other quarterback's white, and then the coach, who's white, ends up picking this kid on the 9th grade team and putting him on the 8th grade team. So like it discourages him to the max. And then the father's like, okay, I get it. If you want to do this, we're going to do this. And he fights tooth and nail, workouts, busting his butt. So the parents do support him, right? It's not saying that they don't. It's just they don't understand the best way to support him sometimes. So you get that social injustice even in the home, right? And then you see it as it goes on. You see it a lot in the school. You see it a lot in the hotels.
In the sports and everything.
And you see it when he goes away. And like you said, you're in the 90s, and you still got people acting like this. Which is a major issue.
So just look at it when you say that the coach was white, the quarterback was white. Imagine how in the NFL, when they had talented black quarterbacks that never got to see the day of light. Coaches. They never the same thing. Now it has changed. You know, back in the 80s, I think Warren Moon was the very first black quarterback. Before that, it was unheard of. They were known as running backs, fullbacks, wide receivers. You know, that's it. Coaches, it weren't. But now we've come so far and evolved in such a way that now you have black coaches. You have black quarterbacks. I'm still waiting to get to a point to where we see black owners. You know what I mean? Because that's still something that there's minority owners in that sense of like they'll have a minority stake in those football teams, but not the majority. You know what I mean? So, and what I want to know, because did you see the scene about the combine?
So I saw the whole episode. I saw every episode. But it's just have to remember. So
the combine, when the one thing that I saw bits and pieces of that episode, and he basically compared the NFL Combine to slavery.
Okay, all right, yep.
I feel certain ways when people, whether it's people of color or people of non-color, because I don't know if you've been at work or on a job and you've heard maybe one of your coworkers say, "Oh man, they treating us like slaves." I have to check people right then and there because I don't like that when you're using slavery. In this generation, I've never had to deal with that. Now, granted, my mother, aunts and uncles, they went through a lot of racism, bigotry, segregation. My grandparents went through it even more. But when you're using slavery, now I understand in the sense why he was saying it. If you're mentioning it in the optical, the appearance, in the sense because when those slave masters would pick the slaves, they didn't want the smallest, scrawniest slave. They wanted somebody who was big, who was strong, who they know they could work, who they know if they needed them to pick up wood or trees, whatever it is that they needed them to do. They didn't want that small one. They wanted somebody that was big, strong, brawn. So if he was mentioning that in the sense of the appearance, because what they do is the measurement of how fast you are, how high you can jump. And I understand that because if those owners are spending so much amount of money, they want the best player. Where I had to be biased with him on that was because in the combine, it's not just black athletes. You have J.J. Watt, T.J. Watt, Nick Bosa, Gronk, Tom Brady, Christian McCaffrey,
Hernandez.
You had so many players. There's Hawaiian players. There's so many players that went through the combine. You can't just single out everybody else and just, it's like that because now you're taking away from it. You know what I mean? The crazy thing was how offended. I understand the offense from Black America because, again, it's comparing slavery, whereas slavery wasn't a volunteer choice. Nobody was volunteering to be a slave. In professional sports, you volunteer to play. You don't have to play sports. Now, granted, you're not going to, because you think about how many athletes make these millions of dollars and then they retire young. That's their choice.
Exactly.
It's not something that they're forced to do. So I understand. I get why he was saying it, but at the same time, I have to be biased against it. Now, the thing about it, what got me was, and I thought it was humorous because you saw so many non-Black Americans getting offended by it. So my question was, in that sense to them, if you're more offended the fact that he compared the combine to slavery more than slavery itself, then the problem is not Colin Kaepernick, the problem is not the combine, the problem is that individual.
The thought process.
The thought process, because not once did I hear anybody say, okay, they're saying, oh, how is he comparing this to this, But at the same time, I don't hear you condoning it. I'm hearing you saying like, yo, listen, first of all, slavery just shouldn't have never happened. Like, you don't hear that. They're just more sticking to the fact that he compared it to that. So that's what kind of made me laugh, but irked me in the same time. But I just didn't like the fact that he compared that to slavery because, again, when you're using slavery against people of color in that sense, if you don't understand what our ancestors went through in that sense. Now, granted, Hispanics and I'm sure white America also had to go through, in some sense, of injustice in their lives.
Like the Irish,
the Irish
went through
Jewish,
a ton. Jewish,
you know what I mean? So you understand what people have went through.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But it's just like when you are using that, and then the way he used it was so loosely, like, I think the wording should have been a little bit better.
And in the environment, right? Like you think you so like you said, you're walking into an NFL combine that you're having the right to go to as a phenomenal athlete, in which is going to help you make millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars,
right?
Exactly.
Like you look at slavery, where people had zero control of anything they did, and they were just taken from their families, and they were abused, beaten, killed. That for no reason, other than just the color of their skin, which is disturbing, right? It's disturbing. No matter what it is, anything that's happened in our history, right? And they always say history repeats itself. All that stuff should be washed away because we've seen it happen and we understand the negative repercussions from it. Like we don't want to do that, right? Like, but now we continuously see people use that in a tone or a term as if it's normal. Like you said, the loosely aspect, and that's where, like, he's got to think about the way he handles himself in those situations, right? And you saw it affect him in the NFL when he was getting drafted. That affected him. It dropped him way down for what he did say. I remember that now because it went all over. But my problem is, like, why are you saying that? And like you said, on the flip side, why are people just saying the things they were saying about it, like slavery's a normal thing?
A normal thing, and then they're trying to say, well, no, you can't say this. You can't compare it like that because slavery was like this. Slavery was wrong.
Slavery was definitely wrong. It was one of the worst things that's happened into our country.
It was fucked up.
100%.
So when you're saying it like, oh, he shouldn't be saying that, but then, okay, well, what are you saying against that?
Yep.
And I didn't hear too much of that.
Yeah, because they didn't open up too much about that either.
But I understood when Black Americans were saying it because they felt the same way that we felt. Like, come on, bro, like, you should know better than saying that, you know? But, you know, all in all, what I will say, I understood why he started to kneel because there was a...
Well, before you go too far, I want to talk about this. So that's the one thing, is I know you have a lot of knowledge, and I think it's important that I didn't have that knowledge of this whole situation, right? I saw, as a white American, I watched a black quarterback
disrespect the flag.
And that affected me,
of course.
But I didn't have knowledge of the situation, right? And I can't stand in your shoes and say that I understand what it's like to be black. I can't. So I can't hate the guy to a certain point, right? Like I'm not gonna say I hate him. This is blah 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 blah. Right? Like he's standing up, and now that I know more from the show, the social injustice that has led to that. But as me, I saw it, and the only thing I thought about was black, white, Asian, Dominican, anything that have fought for our country and died for our country. Right?
Exactly.
The supporting of the military that gives us the chance to be freedom of speech and free to do what we want, right? But I know that there's something that I think as a group of people we need to hear from you, that you have knowledge on, that I don't think anybody knew going into this situation other than the minimal people, which is what I think you're going to explain right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to explain. Thank you, because when that started to happen, and again, he was doing it based off of the police brutality, George Floyd, Amadou Diallo, Timothy Stansberry, Sandra Clark, Sean Bell. There was so many innocent black lives just taken from police brutality. And it got to a point to where we started looking at celebrities, athletes, people of color in powerful positions. Why aren't y'all saying something? Why aren't y'all saying enough? So when he did that, it got everybody talking. And then it created this sense of, now people felt compelled, like, now I have to say something. He put himself out there. Where people got offended was, again, and I understand that because I'm an American. I love this country. So when I was growing up and we would have to stand for the national anthem in school, we just knew we were standing for the country that this is America. This is our country. This is something that we do. It wasn't, we didn't look at it in the sense of how we look at it when you get older, where you can see, okay, you go through systematic racism, social injustice. We weren't looking at it like that. We were just looking at it, that's our country. That's just what we do. But then when we started to see how we were getting treated, especially in those times where we were just getting gunned down by police, and if you got to see it, if you got to hear it, it got us pissed off. So when he started to kneel, we took it as a sense of, okay, we're fighting back against what we thought a country that was here and it was going to fight for us. So when he was doing it, and I understand every person, no matter if you're black or white, they always have to have that one person decides to walk themselves into the fire. And that's what he did.